Prince Harry's fallout with Senabale has taken another dramatic turn, and this time the conflict is no longer just emotional or symbolic. It is turning into a direct and deeply public legal war, with harsh claims, angry responses, and serious questions about what has happened to one of the causes once most closely associated with the Duke of Sussex. What makes this especially striking is not only the legal action itself, but the fact that Senabale was never just another charity linked to Harry's name. For years, it was seen as one of the clearest examples of the work he cared about most, a project rooted in purpose, compassion, and long-term commitment. Now, instead of unity, there is accusation, bitterness, and a public exchange that is becoming harder to ignore. That is why this latest development feels so significant. When Prince Harry co-founded Senabale with Prince Cecil back in 2006, the charity represented something deeply personal. It was created to support people affected by HIV and AIDS in Lesotho and Botswana, and it stood for a kind of service that seemed genuine, focused, and beyond the usual cycle of royal headlines. For a long time, Senabale was one of the strongest parts of Harry's public image. It was often described as a meaningful legacy project, one that connected him to his late mother's humanitarian values and gave him a serious role in work that mattered. That history is exactly what makes the current situation feel so jarring. A relationship that once looked defined by loyalty and shared purpose is now broken down so publicly that lawyers are involved, official statements are being fired back and forth, and the language on both sides is becoming increasingly severe. This is not a quiet internal disagreement. It has become a damaging public battle, and the tone makes clear that whatever trust once existed has been badly shaken. The newest flashpoint came after Prince Harry's spokesperson issued a sharply worded response to libel claims made by Senabale. The charity has launched legal action against Harry and Mark Dyer, a former trustee, claiming they played a central role in setting off what it describes as a wave of harmful public pressure after Harry's exit. That alone is an extraordinary accusation. Senabale is not just suggesting disagreement or tension. It is saying the Duke of Sussex and Dyer were linked to a campaign that caused serious operational and reputational damage. Harry's side did not hold back in its reply. Through a spokesperson, he and Mark Dyer categorically rejected the claims and described them as offensive and damaging. That wording matters because it shows they are not treating this as a misunderstanding that can be smoothed over with careful diplomacy. They are pushing back directly and forcefully. The response also went after the very idea of the legal action, arguing that it is extraordinary for a charity to use funds to pursue the very people who helped build and support it for nearly 20 years, rather than focusing resources on communities it was created to serve. That line is especially powerful because it goes right to the moral center of the dispute. It turns the argument away from personalities and toward principle. Harry's side is essentially saying this legal battle should not even be happening inside a charity founded to serve vulnerable people. It is an attempt to frame the case not just as unfair, but as a betrayal of the charity's purpose. And in a public fight like this, that kind of framing matters because it invites people to ask a bigger question. How did a mission-based organization end up in such a damaging conflict with one of its founders? Senabale, though, is presenting a very different version of events. According to the charity, legal proceedings were started because of what it calls a coordinated adverse media campaign that has been unfolding since March 25, 2025. The organization says that campaign caused operational disruption and reputational harm, not only to the charity itself, but to its leadership and strategic partners as well. That is strong language, and it signals just how seriously Senabale says it views the matter. Even more striking is the charity's claim that Harry and Mark Dyer have been identified through evidence as the architects of that media campaign. That is the kind of accusation that takes a public dispute into much more dangerous territory. Once an organization starts saying there's evidence linking named individuals to a campaign that allegedly led to reputational harm and cyberbullying, the stakes rise quickly. This stops being just about image and becomes a matter of legal credibility, proof, and serious public consequence. Senabale says the campaign encouraged false narratives in the media about the charity and its leadership. It says those narratives were harmful enough to affect relationships with staff, current partners, and even potential future partners. That part is important because charities depend heavily on credibility. If a charity's leadership is being questioned publicly, if stories are circulating that undermine confidence, and if partner relationships begin to wobble, the practical effects can be severe. Reputation is not an extra in the charity sector. It is part of how the organization functions. The charity also says the fallout has forced leaders to divert their time and energy into handling a crisis that it insists was not of its own making. That description paints a picture of an organization pulled away from its core work and into a defensive posture. And again, that is where the situation becomes especially uncomfortable to watch. Every public statement makes the same silent point louder. Energy that could be going toward the communities Senebail was built to support is instead being consumed by internal conflict and legal escalation. At the same time, Senebail has clearly anticipated criticism over whether donor or charity money is being spent on this legal action. In its statement, it stressed that no charitable funds are being used and that the legal costs are being covered entirely by external funding. That detail was obviously included for a reason. The organization knows that once a charity is seen battling former insiders in court, people will immediately ask whether resources meant for public service are being redirected toward legal warfare. By saying outside funding is covering the costs, Senebail is trying to remove one of the most obvious lines of attack against it. Still, Harry's spokesperson's response shows that this reassurance is not enough to calm the criticism from his side. The counterattack remains sharp and emotional, because for Harry and Dyer, this is clearly about more than technical legal defense. It is also about legacy. Senebail was one of Harry's signature commitments, and the idea that the charity is now accusing him of helping fuel a campaign of harm is a kind of reversal that could affect how people view that legacy. That is why the response from his camp sounds so indignant. It is not just about denying liability. It is about rejecting a narrative they seem to see as insulting to years of work and involvement. And then there's the wider atmosphere around the dispute, which has only become more combustible because of comments linked to Sophie Shandaka. After Harry's resignation became public, she said she'd been targeted by people who play the victim card. That phrase immediately drew attention because it sounded like more than a generic observation. It carried a feeling of direct criticism aimed at those on the other side of the conflict, and it added a personal edge to a dispute that was already turning ugly. She went even further in describing the situation as a story about a woman who dared to blow the whistle on serious internal problems. Her list of alleged issues was severe: poor governance, weak executive management, abuse of power, bullying, harassment, misogyny, misogynoir, and a cover-up that followed. That is an explosive description, and it changes the tone of the entire Senebail dispute because it suggests that, in her view, this is not merely a clash of personalities or a communications breakdown. She is framing it as a battle over systemic wrongdoing and the consequences of speaking up. That kind of language immediately widens the conflict. Once claims involving governance failures, abuse of power, misogyny, and racialized mistreatment are introduced, the story no longer sits only in the category of a charity fallout. It becomes a broader fight over accountability, workplace culture, and who gets believed when serious internal concerns are raised. And because Prince Harry has long positioned himself publicly as someone who speaks against injustice and supports institutional reform, the optics of being caught on the opposite side of that kind of framing are especially difficult. That is one of the reasons this story has such force. The people and themes involved make the contradictions impossible to ignore. Harry, who built part of his modern public identity around challenging institutions and defending those who feel mistreated, is now on the receiving end of claims from a former beloved charity that present him and his ally as part of the problem. Whether those accusations stand up or not, the clash between the image and the allegation is what makes this moment so potent. It is also why the fallout feels so much more bitter than a standard organizational dispute. Senebail was not just a professional attachment. It was personal. It was part of the version of Harry that many people once found most compelling. Unlike royal protocol, palace politics, or media conflict, Senebail represented something human and service-driven. So when that relationship collapses in public, it lands with a different kind of sadness. It suggests that one of the few causes that once seemed unquestionably solid in Harry's life is now part of the instability surrounding him. And that is impossible to separate from the wider pattern that has followed Prince Harry in recent years. Again and again, relationships that once appeared central to his life or identity have ended in rupture, public conflict, or legal confrontation. The monarchy, the British press, security arrangements, family relationships, and now one of his most defining charities have all become sources of open dispute. Each case is different, of course, but together they create a broader impression of life increasingly surrounded by confrontation. For critics, this latest Senate clash will likely look like more evidence of that pattern. For supporters, it may look like another painful example of Harry being pulled into conflict around institutions he once trusted. Either way, the consequences for Senate itself could be profound. Charities rely not just on legal innocence or technical governance, but on confidence. Donors, partners, staff, and the communities served all need to believe that leadership is stable, mission is clear, and internal conflict is not swallowing the purpose of the organization. A very public battle involving one of the charity's founders risks casting a shadow over all of that, even if one side ultimately wins in court or in public opinion. The damage from prolonged reputational warfare can linger long after the statements stop. There is also the emotional impact on those who saw Senate as a rare example of cross-border humanitarian work that rose above palace drama. For many people, the charity symbolized the best side of Harry's public life. A real connection to the people of Lesotho and Botswana, a meaningful commitment to young people affected by HIV and AIDS, and a partnership that seemed grounded in service rather than spectacle. Watching that now dissolve into accusations of cyberbullying, media manipulation,